Welcome to the Providence College podcast. Subscribe to the show on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Google Play. If you like what you hear, please review and share with others. Email podcast@providence.edu with questions or comments. Go Friars!
Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the PC podcast. I'm your host, Matt Chittum, and I'm joined by our producer and PC videographer, Chris Judge, class of 05. As a major gift officer at PC, I have met hundreds of fascinating members of the Providence College community, and I'm excited to share some of their stories with you. Today's guest is Diane Madl, the head field hockey coach here at Providence College. Diane is a UConn alum, where she started on their field hockey team as an All-American, magna cum laude grad, and Player of the Year. She won the Honda Broderick Award. After that, she moved on to UMaine and has now been at PC for 15 years. Diane, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Matt. Great to be here.
And one thing I didn't mention in that intro was your experience as an Olympian.
Yeah, that was a good time.
I can imagine, and given where we are in the calendar this year with the Olympics going on now, kind of 'tis the season to talk about Olympic experiences. Now, you were in the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta, and when you think back to that experience, what are some of the first couple things that kind of come to mind for you?
Oh yeah, this it definitely brings back some great memories. Watching our U.S. team this year playing. As far as memories, I would say the one that stands out to me the most was our opening ceremonies. That was kind of the pinnacle. It was a moment where it became real. All the hard work, the lifelong dream, walking over that ramp into that stadium with 75,000 people cheering USA.
Right.
That's when it became real.
Was it an emotional experience?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It was, the emotions just come over you whether you want them to or not. It was pretty tingling experience for sure.
Did you have that did you know, say before it started or when you were envisioning it, did you know that you would be emotional during that time? Or was it, I guess another way of putting it is, when you were visualizing that experience, did the reality of it match what you had pictured, or was it far and above what you had thought?
Yeah, I don't know if you can ever really truly know how that moment will be. You anticipate that. I'm an emotional person anyway, so I knew that I'd be a little emotional, but I don't think I realized the impact of all of the senses, the sounds, the visual, and just having that crowd cheering in that moment. It went through my body for sure. And
not that you can compare it to a different Olympic experience, but what was it like being not only an Olympian, but being an Olympian in a U.S. year? We hosted the games in Atlanta that year, and how do you think that affected your Olympic experience as opposed to, say, going down to Rio or wherever?
Yeah, I think it definitely enhanced it because no matter what, you want to be proud of your country and represent them very well, but hosting, you had a little extra edge as far as that went, and it also provided an opportunity for my family to be there to experience it with me. So that piece added a dimension that you just can't get if you're in another country. Right.
And was that a career goal for you as you're progressing through the field hockey ranks?
Yeah. Initially, just being an Olympian, I still remember a moment when I told my dad, it was an Olympic year when I was just a little kid, that I want to do that. Watching the Olympics, the spirit and everything about it was really, really cool. And I just made that statement to my dad. I had never even heard of field hockey at that point in my life, but that athletic competition, that commonality of bringing people together in the spirit of the games, it was something that I really wanted to do. And then when I found field hockey, it was a natural fit, and little by little I realized that it could possibly happen, and as coaches encouraged me and allowed me to grow, it became a goal for sure.
And then you graduated in 89 from UConn, so the Olympics were 7 years out for you. So in terms of kind of your athletic peak, was that something that, so you're 7 years out, did that seem like a long gap in terms of maintaining your athletic peak to stay at that level? Because at that point you were kind of had transitioned from playing to coaching as well.
Right. So when I first graduated, I had been playing with the junior team a little bit, and then was elevated up to the senior team, and unfortunately we didn't qualify for the 92 Olympics. So at that point I had to make a decision, what I wanted to do, and in that moment I decided to take a step away from the sport and focus on my career, and I did that. But as I was away from it, I missed it and missed that competitive spirit and just everything it brought, and was encouraged to get back into it along with my own aspirations. So I did get back into it probably at a good time in my career. I think emotionally and mentally I was more prepared and ready for the challenges that it brought.
So did the step away from athletic competition help you at all when you returned? Did it give you a different perspective, or how would have it differed if you just stuck with it?
Yeah, I think it definitely helped. It being in the coaching aspect of it, it gave me a different perspective on the game. It also allowed me to understand when I was being coached, how a player then can respond in a better way. So it also allowed me to mature a little bit and understand how special it was. Mm-hmm. So removing myself from it gave me that perspective a lot easier.
So do you feel like you have the same personality as a coach as you did as a player?
That's a very good question. No one has ever asked me that, actually. Yes, I think to some degree. I was very intense as a player. I would say, if you ask most people, they would say I'm pretty intense coaching-wise. As a coach, I have to be much more verbal than I was as a player, which I think may be the biggest difference, but something that we grow with and get comfortable with. But the intensity piece, yes.
And from an intensity standpoint, is that more on the field, off the field? I think because for a lot of coaches, you see this kind of, not a split personality, but they have these different forums that they have to, they have to work in, right? Because you're working with student athletes, and when you're on the field, you have this limited time and space that you can communicate, and it's very structured. And then you have the other side where you're just working with a 20-year-old and helping them in life generally. So how do you feel like you kind of alternate between those worlds?
Well, I hope I do it well, because you hit it right on the head. You do have to not have a split personality, but many ways of communicating to your players, and there's a time and place for each of those ways. So I do think that I'm much more intense on field. Off field, I can be considered more quiet, but try to bring a blend of passion and compassion. And mm-hmm. The compassion is more the off-field, making sure our players know that I'm here for them as a person, first and foremost. A player, I'm going to develop you in the ways we need to, but as a person, I'm going to be supportive and push you however I need to, but be there for you as well.
Right. So you've played at the highest level, and you've coached some very good athletes as well. So in terms of trying to get people to a level of excellence, and I know that can be a relative term, but just in terms of the general term, getting people to literally the highest level within field hockey, what for you separates people who get to that point, some people who don't quite reach there, but had the necessary talent to get there?
From my experience in the players that I've coached and just been around, a lot of it has to do with just their belief and their confidence in themselves. It's kind of odd that someone who comes across as talented is just missing a little bit, and it's amazing how hard our players are on themselves and how they don't always necessarily believe how much better they can be. So the belief in themselves and that confidence, I think, is the biggest thing.
Really? Because I would think that if once you get to a high level, that the confidence part would almost take care of itself, because you're obviously playing very well and you're at a point where you're recruited to very good schools, you're getting contacted to play for the national team, whether it's junior national team or higher level. I'm surprised that confidence, even at that level, would be a differentiator. Now, is that something that can be changed, can be coached out of somebody or mentored out of somebody?
I think it can, to some degree. It's something that I guess there's different beliefs, but I do believe that it's a combination. Some people have an instinctual confidence and just natural confidence, but it can be enhanced by situations that you put them in where they can have success. Also conversations and mentoring, as you mentioned, as far as what they do well and focusing on the strengths. Too often we may get caught up in finding faults or finding corrections constantly. And one thing we really try to do is focus on our players' strengths. And with those strengths, when they are able to really show those and embrace those, the other corrections that happen much more easily and efficiently.
That's great. And actually, Bob Driscoll mentioned the same value in emphasizing strengths when we did a podcast with him 2 weeks ago. But also, that answer kind of brings up another question, because you're in a situation where you want to course correct if someone's not doing something well, and at the same time you want to emphasize the strengths. So do you find yourself, is it hard to kind of balance those two things when you're coaching either on the practice field or in a film session or talking to someone in your office?
It is. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't. It's something that I constantly work on and encourage our staff to work on, because helping sometimes doesn't mean always making corrections. Helping is also about creating the confidence and the strength and those positive feelings that they're receiving from you. So there's a lot of ways to help. So corrections is just one, but showing the strengths and recognizing the strengths is equally, if not more important.
And when you're recognizing strengths, obviously that goes not only to your current roster, but when you're recruiting as well. And I know just generally across the NCAA, you see high school athletes committing to colleges earlier and earlier in their high school careers. Is that something that's affected you in your recruitment?
To some degree, for sure. Yeah. It happens, and you have to just kind of accept it, I guess, or do something about it. But I'm not a big believer in that. I think they're kids, and yes, we're trying to get the best talent here, but the maturity level that happens between some kids committing when they were freshmen in high school now, even in field hockey, to when they're juniors in high school is tremendous, and it's such an important time for them, and I want to be able to see them, how they're maturing through that time. So yes, we make contact with players as we are allowed, through compliance, of course, but we make contact with them and let them know that we see something in them, we're interested, we'd like to follow through with the recruitment. But it's really important for me to take the time to get to know the player over a period of time to make sure that they're the right fit. It can be the most talented kid in the world, but we really have to fit into what our values are here and what our goals are here.
And for you, what does a right fit mean?
I think we have a mantra called the DASH, which is up on the wall there I'm pointing, but it just talks about the intangible things. So it talks about focusing on the process, focusing on all we have to worry about is getting better today. All we have to worry about is if we're selfless, then everything else is going to take care of itself. We have to understand that we have to earn the right to win. We have to understand that we're going to respect our teammates. We're going to respect everyone around ourselves. We're going to respect our game. So those intangible things that a stick and ball have nothing to do with, but will make a difference. So those players that are coachable and that have those kind of qualities.
Now, how often do you have to see a player or communicate with a recruit to make the determination on whether they would be a good fit or not for your system or for your culture?
I don't know if there's a set number. We try to do our background work as well, so we talk to as many people that have had the opportunity to know them as a person and as a player, and be able to have some context when we do meet them. But it varies. We may have a player where we've only met them a couple times and feel pretty good about them, but we have background work that we also feel good about. So I don't think there's a definitive number on that.
So what are some common goals that you see for recruits that you bring in and some of your current student athletes in terms of just, personal goals, team goals? What are some common threads that you often see?
I think in general, it's about getting better, which fits right into our mantra. They want to become the best player that they physically, mentally, emotionally can become. I think we try to really encourage, and when talking about our program, we discuss what our goals are, what our short-term goals are, what our long-term goals are, and making sure that players want to be able to contribute to those goals. And in essence, we want to be able to every year compete for a Big East championship, and our shorter long-term goal is we're competing in the NCAA tournament, and within 5 years we want to definitely be winning a national championship.
Right.
So we want those players that have that competitive drive, that competitive innate ability to want that as well.
And when you're giving the PC pitch, obviously you're having more than one conversation, so it's over a long period of time. But what are some of the major things that you highlight with a recruit, and what do you feel like gains the most traction when someone chooses PC? There are some commonalities, or some of the reasons that are often named when someone decides to attend PC and become not only a student but a field hockey player.
I think it's about the people. It for sure is about the people. When they come on campus, without a doubt, that is one of the first and common things that they speak about, is how the people just seem like a family. Mm-hmm. And we reiterate to them that it's not that we seem like it, we are. And that even though we're a small family, we're competing in a big conference, and we're big-time athletics. So I think the blend of both, having the smaller family feel with competing at the highest level, is very important.
That's great. And then that kind of ties right into what you're doing now. So practice has started. We're actually catching you between double sessions, which is great. So what, kind of looking forward to this season, what are some of the things that you and your staff are focused on? And what are obviously you can't forecast too much because you never know how things are going to pan out. But what are some of the things that are top of mind of you going into the season?
Sure. Well, we have 9 freshmen this year, so we have a large...
on a roster of how many?
21 this year.
Okay.
Yeah, so almost half of the team. So we're young, but I'm really excited about the growth potential and our potential to do really some damage in the conference and just in general. There's great energy and really good growth already just in the 3 days that we've been on field. So good things to come for sure. As far as focuses, we're keeping it really simple and basic. We want to make sure that everyone understands our philosophies and our principles, both on the offensive side and the defensive side. I'm more of a defense-first mentality, build from the back forward. We have to be, strong defensively, and then the attack will take care of itself.
When you have a young team like this one, how much do you have to rely on the older players, not only on the field, but off the field?
Crucial. You hit it. We've been, our culture, we've really worked hard on building our culture, and part of that is our leadership and having our veterans be accountable to maintaining and improving that culture every day. And part of that for them is to pass it forward and pass it down and make sure that their younger teammates understand and follow through with what that culture means. And
how do you, especially from a communication perspective with some of the older athletes that you have, is there a situation where you have them coming in like weekly, or how often do you open it up so you really have these intense conversations with them? They don't have to be intense, I guess, but so make sure that you're getting your point across, your vision for the team, but making it so that's also coming from them, because I would assume the more ownership they take, the better the results. So how do you operate in terms of making sure that they're getting the right messages across to their teammates, but at the same time taking ownership in that message?
Absolutely, great question. Well, in the spring, it starts semesters before, but this past spring, we brought everybody in, our entire team in the spring, to leadership meetings. So we went through very specific things every week relative to leadership, talked about their strengths, where improvements can be made, all that kind of stuff as far as each player, and then posed scenarios with them to help them understand and discuss how certain situations can be handled. So the process has been started, and moving forward into this semester, we'll be having, again, weekly meetings with our captains, as well as we have one-on-one meetings with our players all the time to talk about academics, everything hockey related, of course, but also talk about what have you done, this week, or can you name an instance that maybe you showed some leadership, and then we can talk about things like that. So it's not always the same conversation, but we try to always bring up some scenarios where it forces them to hold themselves accountable to how they act.
Right. Now, you've been at PC for 15 years. You've seen a lot of changes within the school. What are some of the things you'd like to highlight in terms of that change when you're meeting with someone for the first time?
Sure. I think the biggest change, obviously, is the obvious one, is the facilities and just the campus in general. It is unbelievable how beautiful campus is, and you don't really have to even highlight it to recruits because they see it, but can talk about the process of getting here and the commitment that it took to get here. So that has been a major change that we highlight for sure.
And I think one of the huge positives when you have a coach that stays at a place for such a long time, and you did that at Maine and now at PC, is that the consistency for the Alumni Network as well, because they don't have to kind of reset their relationships with new coaches and new coaching staffs. So is that something that you've also put a lot of time and effort into maintaining and cultivating? We
do the best we can. When I first came in, obviously I didn't know a lot of the alums, so it was a priority for me to make sure they knew that we wanted them to be as involved as possible with the program. They created the program that we have today, and we have a lot to thank them for, and we want to make sure that they feel that love. And it's something that we absolutely take seriously every year. In the fall, we have our players create a weekly newsletter, so to speak, or like an update specifically for our alums, where they can talk about some of the behind the scene things that happen, that some of the corny stuff, some of the funny stuff that they can appreciate because they've been here, done that. But the alums are such a huge part of any organization. Those that came before us have led the way.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for everything you do here at PC. If someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Email dmadl@providence.edu.
And Madl, it's D-M-A-D-L?
It's D-M-A-D-L, yes.
That's great. Thank you so much. Is there anything you want to say before we head out of here?
No, I appreciate so much you doing this. I think it's great for the entire campus, and I just hope everyone can appreciate how great Friartown is.
Great. Thank you so much, Coach.
Thank you.